Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Progress America Unfiltered. It's me, Tyler. I'm here today with Rhett and Jocelyn, and we're excited to talk to you about all things Gen Z, specifically what the future looks like for the youngest generation, especially in regards to loneliness. So I'm just going to go ahead and kick it off. Jocelyn brought up this topic, and we're really excited to talk about it because I personally saw a bunch of articles this week that echo this theme of Gen Z isolation and loneliness. The first thing I saw was from CNBC that said that 1 out of 3 Gen Z young people with student debt are not going to be able to travel home for the holidays this year because student loan repayments have just restarted. Thanks, Biden. So there's that. And then also Instagram did a study that found that similarly, 1 in 3 Gen Z people believe that having their own business is the best way to accrue wealth versus working in an office, working for the man, being a smaller part of a larger company. So I think these statistics have a theme of isolationism, and I really want to get into that. But first, I want to talk to Jocelyn. What made you think about this topic? Let's get into it, and we can see our feelings on those two statistics as well as anything else.
Yeah, no, thank you, Tyler. And I know this is a topic that we love to talk about a lot, that we are living through a loneliness epidemic so aggressive and brutal. It's being talked about and discussed by public health officials and governments all over the world, especially as we have more and more research that shows just how dangerous loneliness is. There was this study that found that social alienation has the same impact on your physical health and life expectancy as smoking a pack a day. That's a lot, okay? That's a lot. But it really makes sense when you think about biologically, we are humans that are flooded with all these great regulating chemicals when we're with friends, when we're with our kids, when we're with our lovers, when we're with our parents. And it's like, this is nature telling us what we need. We need to be around people we love. We need to be around people that make us feel safe. Humans are complex mammals that we can't even survive on our own without parents for 5 years minimum. We are love creatures, and our modern society is one where more and more of us either live alone or with roommates that we've all had bad roommate experiences. And the best of situations, it's a communitarian coming of age story, and the worst, it's a nightmare. So more and more, even if we're around people, they're not necessarily people that love and care for us. And as work becomes more transitory, it's more difficult for people to really invest in communities when they don't even know if they'll live in the same place in 2 years. And I think that's really pumping all of us with levels of stress that we just weren't meant to feel every day.
Yeah, Jocelyn, something you said there about work being very transitory, really brings me back to this conversation I had about this neighborhood I spend a lot of time in San Francisco that I love to talk about called the Castro. So much fun, vibrant LGBT community here. But I remember before I would spend a lot of time here, I heard a friend describe it as a very transient place. And, I love this community so much and I spend a lot of time here, but I think that's a great point, is that there are a lot of people that come and go. And as exciting as that is to see a bunch of new people come in, it makes me sad when I see people leave the neighborhood as well. And so I think with that being said, is just as humans, we, I think, have a really strong drive to exist in community. And when things disrupt that, whatever that is, being shifting to working at home or just picking up and moving out of places, it really does leave an emptiness feeling inside of all of us. And so that was just something that I think of. And I think about that word a lot, transient. And I've moved from several different cities over the course of my life. So I've definitely contributed to that as well. So I think that if anything being said, viewers at home, if this is your invitation to reach out to some of your friends from other places that used to live or you don't see so often, I say go ahead and do it.
I love that. But I also want to take a second and put the focus on the real baddie, if you will, which is our capitalist system. I agree. I'm also super transient. I was a military brat, moved around a lot my whole life. I don't think I've ever lived somewhere for more than 4 years consecutively, something like that. Definitely not in adulthood, at least. And so I think it's really interesting, but I think especially when I see these statistics about Gen Z wanting to work for themselves, and not being able to go home from the holidays, and the real toll that this isolationism has on our health, I can't help but think about the fact that this is the way that our systems have been built. Gen Z has grown up in like uh, an ecosystem that tells them like, you won't have this by the time you're this age, you won't be able to buy a house, you won't be able to do this, you won't be able to afford basic necessities, and so because of that, I think it's very reactionary, and people are retreating into themselves and saying, okay, well, I can't go home for the holidays because I can't afford it, and I can't do this. And it's really, really, I think, dangerous. And I think it's important to know that these are the systems that are in place. Student debt shouldn't exist, at least not in the way that it does now. We shouldn't have people who are paying more on their debt than they originally took out because of insane interest rates. We shouldn't have, a system where young people know that they're being paid a tenth of what the high, probably not even a tenth of what the highest paid person at their, whatever company is being paid, knowing that they can't pay their bills, but they're, making sure Jeff Bezos has a yacht and a super jet that goes to space. Like, well, young people know that the system is rigged. And so they're trying to find ways to opt out. But as Jocelyn was saying, some of these ways, this isolationism is not the answer.
Well, and like, I want to bring up something that's maybe a little politically incorrect, but it's important to discuss and be honest about, that in oppressive systems, people become worse versions of themselves, right? So this is something that, has been on my mind and heart ever since I was an undergraduate, because that's when I first started reading very deeply about this public health problem. And of course, I was like, well, I'm just going to make more friends. That is what I will do. Right? Because in America, we make everything an individual solution. But like Tyler's saying, it's structural, right? So what I found is, to quote The Atlantic, America is in her insecure attachment era. It is actually very difficult to make friends and keep friends. And what I was finding, I'm like, is it me? Do I suck? The fact is, Americans are getting worse and worse at friendship. And like, you hear this like with dating, right? Like, oh, like, why are men like all like this now? You're not wrong, because in a culture that is increasingly isolated, people do become increasingly self-centered, increasingly narcissistic, because those habits that you get when you live in a group house or have a friend group you see every day, these are habits, these are skills. And when we lose them, of course, we become increasingly self-directed. That's just how it is. We become increasingly critical, increasingly gossipy, increasingly we become convinced that our opinions are like these enlightened things, instead of like, no, that's just what you think, bro. That's just your opinion. And then the other thing that, Tyler brings up is, we do not have infrastructure which supports community right now. We have infrastructure which supports individualism. So in my dream, I just exit my apartment and Tyler and Rhett are just chilling in the lounge, and we have like a casual, low intensity interaction. Unfortunately, though, if I want to see Tyler and Rhett, it's like, okay, let's get brunch. Let's pay $60 and sit down and look at each other. That's actually kind of intense. And it means that because there is more energy demanded to be social, people are like, oh, I don't want to shower and leave the house and pay all this money, versus we're created to just kind of casually bump into each other and bond. It's not supposed to be this difficult to see the people you care about.
Yeah, that really makes me think about how, although the three of us can hop on our little virtual recording studio every week and chat, and it's so much fun, but whenever we do get a chance to meet in person, it just feels completely different. The amount of fun that we have in person together, just our little trio squad here, versus just kind of being at home on the computer, even though we have these great conversations, it really is no comparison, in my opinion. This is my way of saying I miss you both and I want to hang out soon, please.
I know.
But
I
I
said I
think
missed you when you were here last time.
Oh my gosh, right? No, I need to come back to DC. I'm very excited about it. But Jocelyn, I just think that's such a great point. And then as you mentioned too, $60 for brunch, how is that possible for us to just like say like, oh yeah, let's just all go out to this like very expensive meal or like buy like our $8 coffee drinks to sit down and catch up, when we're thinking about things too, like grappling with student loan repayment and like the pressure to buy gifts for people for the holidays, all of those things where it's like, it really is, do I prioritize my social life or do I prioritize like literally like affording to exist these
Okay, two
days?
things. One, yeah, it's totally a catch-22 trap of like, if you want to hang out with your friends, you have to spend money. But then if you spend money, you buy too much avocado toast and then you can't afford to buy a house or, whatever it is the narrative is. Because at the end of the day, people always blame the products of the generation and not the systems that put them there. Like everybody blame millennials for avocado toast and not the fact that, boomers ate up the housing market and made poor financial decisions and things like that. Number two, I've been doing a lot of research about this, and this term called third spaces, third places, is a really big reason why we're seeing all of this loneliness and this inability to just kind of casually see people. So one of the ways I went to this amazing talk by the author of Platonic. I cannot think of her name right now. Sorry, but she wrote the New York Times bestseller called Platonic, The Art of Making Friends, something like that. And she gave a talk here in DC, and I went to it. And she talked about how a lot of our friendships in early life are made and centered around third places you just pop into, you go to regularly. So you're going to see the same people with frequency, but there's no overarching like goal. So like, you make friends in class and like you chat before class, but at the end of the day, you're like watching, the lecture or whatever. But third places like the school library or the campus lawn or things like that at college are really prevalent because you have no stated aim. And so it's easier to connect with people and you're seeing the same people over and over, which makes it easy to naturally accrue and maintain friendships. And this lack of third places in the United States, places where you are not expected to spend money, you can spend a long amount of time and be social and see the same people, they no longer exist. Like Jocelyn was saying, if I want to hang out with my friends, I'm expected to spend money. And that's just what it is. Even if we go to a coffee shop and I'm only spending $5, I understand that I can't be there for 8 hours without spending $5 more. And then there's even libraries. Oh, go ahead, Jocelyn. Well, and there's even libraries, like, you can't really talk in a library. So that's like a semi third space, but not really viable in terms of friendship making because, you're supposed to be quiet and respectful. Parks in this country are not really taken care of in similar ways to European countries, and they're designed to be uh, not places where people hang for long periods of time because we're trying to combat homelessness and keep unhoused people from having a comfortable place, which makes parks not really that comfortable for people to be unless you're bringing your own stuff. So anyway, end of rant, but the demise of the third place, a place where you can just be expected to go and hang out, community halls, has led to the devaluing of these community values and places where we can all gather.
Well, and I want to this might end up being 2 episodes, so I'm sorry. I think the three of us have so much to say about this topic. And like I think we have two things, right? Like the minimizing and denigrating of community and the exalting of romantic relationships as like this panacea. And I had this like massive series of realizations recently. And I was thinking about my life, and I don't know if I've discussed this on the show, but I fell in love with my best friend from college and we bonded in third spaces. And I think about this a lot, right? Like if I saw Connor in a dating app, I wouldn't know. Like, it probably would have been something dumb about like Pokemon and Bernie Sanders. But like, because we were able to like bond in that natural way, we form like a deep bond. And that is how people bond. We bond through exposure. We actually have a familiarity bias, which is so funny because all the rhetoric around people is like we like mystery and novelty, and that's not really true. We like the people that we see a lot, right? So like if your next door neighbor, that you may have nothing in common with them, but if you see them a lot, you start making small talk, you start to have a positive bias towards them. And that's why our college friends, our high school friends, they have this like positive relationship with us, even if we had drama with them, even if we fought with them, because we saw them a lot and we saw them in natural ways where we didn't have to like put on makeup. And the funny thing is though, like we then tell people like, okay, you're going to find this romantic partner and then it's going to be just you two. And you're going to be in this like house where you don't see other people unless you try really hard and post an elaborate dinner party. It's like, and then we're like, well, why are marriages dissolving? Why are people getting divorced? It's like, well, I don't think that's what makes people feel terribly intimate romantic. Just you and some guy in like a big cavernous space where you're not receiving that social stimulation that actually makes us fall in love, both with our partner, but also with our friends. That feeling of like, I'm a part of something bigger than myself. I'm a part of a community. That's what triggers that oxytocin that we associate with being in love to begin with.
I definitely think, Jocelyn, that that proximity piece in romantic relationships is a huge, huge, huge thing. And I'm sure the three of us could go back and forth exchanging like horror stories from like dating apps and all of that for sure. And maybe that'll be another episode as well. So drop that in the comments if you want to hear about that. But something that I was really thinking about when it comes to third spaces too is, so I work two jobs. Like I live in San Francisco, very expensive to live here. I got to work two jobs to keep food on my table. Today I woke up to the news that my first student loan auto payment went out. So woohoo, nothing like that to kick off the holiday season. But with my two jobs, I can go like days without going to any third spaces that I really enjoy, or like going there in like a non-working capacity, because I enjoy the places or the spaces that I work in, but like visiting those places in a non-working capacity, or like going there for like the very specific reason of like, I'm here to socialize, I'm here to make friends, all of that is a really big deal. Like, I think like another piece for why Americans are so lonely is that we're literally just overworked to the point that we don't have time to enjoy the very little joys in our lives, like going to those spaces that you mentioned.
Absolutely. And, we're running out of time on this. I agree with Jocelyn that we definitely should do a part two to this. And, maybe we'll bring some more anecdotes or even have guests on. Maybe we can tap into your Gen Z friends, Rhett, and hear from them. I'm slightly at the top of the age bracket. But, I will say, like I say about everything, it's a policy choice. Poverty is a policy choice. Loneliness is a policy choice. And when we continue to have elected leaders that are not fighting for student loan debt as hard as they could be, who are not pushing, student loan debt cancellation as hard as they should be, who are not fighting for, investment in local community spaces because they would rather, ostracize unhoused people. These are the consequences that we're seeing. This is what they are. We're underfunding schools. Even in DC, there's been a lot of news, like truancy in DC is toppling other cities across the country. And even though we've done marginally better in 2023 this year than previously, we're seeing kids even as young as middle school not coming to school consistently. This is where it starts. When kids are not given these spaces that are safe for them to learn and for them to be in community, it only trickles down from there. And we're seeing, in my opinion, this is us starting to see the ramifications of that. But I'm going to tell you what I always do, which is contact legislators. They could do something about it. Rhett, Jocelyn, any last thoughts from you before we inevitably do another episode on this really interesting topic?
I have one final closing thought, and it's this healing is not going to necessarily like be super positive, because as we start to build a culture that is safe for people again, it's going to mean a lot of really people dealing with a lot of trauma, and also just a lot of habits of alienation, learning to connect in natural ways again. And like, I think, as Tyler said, this is a policy choice. This is infrastructure. And as we rebuild this infrastructure, like, to be gentle with each other, because it's not easy to live in this country.
Well said. We do need to be gentle with each other. Remind ourselves who the true enemy is. Capitalism, always. And so on that note, we will wrap this episode up. Rhett, Jocelyn, I'm sending you love and good vibes all the way from DC to wherever either of you are right now. It's not the same, but some virtual community was had today. If you're watching this, go talk to your neighbor, say hi to a baby. I don't know, linger in a third public space for a little bit, and make sure you like, follow, and subscribe wherever you can. And we will see you next time at Progress America Unfiltered. Bye.